Okay, so it's 5 minutes after. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jasmine Adams, and I will be one of your moderators. And just to give you a little bit of background information about me, I am a clinical research associate. Um, and I have worked for several of the major CROs and pharma companies, and I have total about 14 years, going on 14 years of research experience. And I'm the founder of the Clinical Research Associate Solution, and I'm also the creator of CRA Makeover course. And Dr. Oyaden is our co-moderator or co-host. So Dr. Oyaden, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Olaito Oyedo. I'm a public health physician. I practice here in Nigeria. I also work in management consulting and in public health research. It's good to have you all here today, and we hope we have a good discussion. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you. Just to give you a little bit of background information about our sponsor or host for um, this series, it's hosted by Reliance Clinical Limited, and they were established in November of 2015. And they've operated with stable and gradually expanding team of highly qualified and experienced clinical research professionals, expanding to West Africa, and they also have an office in Lagos. And they thrive to bridge the gap in clinical research in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. Um, Oh, and I apologize. I forgot to ask for everyone. You should already be muted, but if you're not, please mute your line so that everyone can hear the people that are speaking. Um, and and sometimes you may have to. I'm not sure if you're on your phone or computer, but you may have to double mute yourself. Sometimes just muting yourself on the device does not work, but you can mute yourself directly within the Zoom call. But so back to the intro of the host. So RCL was founded by two amazing women. Matia Makale, she's one of the founding partners, and she has over 15 years of experience and has participated in various research programs at the NIH, the National Cancer Institute, several CROs, public health sectors, pharma companies, and various academic institutions as well. She's advised healthcare leaders around the world, and she's a frequent speaker at major healthcare conferences and advises healthcare leaders around the world. She's also published widely in peer-reviewed journals and has edited or contributed to 7 books. And the second amazing woman is Timi Adeyemi, and she has earned her bachelor's degree in industrial pharmacy. And in addition, she also has an executive MBA specializing on healthcare management. And she has her specialization in clinical research studies and regulations while working for well-known pharma industries like GSK and Quintiles, which is now IQVIA. And Ms. Adeyemi works in life sciences, which focuses on insight into disease processes to improve human health. So that is the founders of Reliance Clinical Limited. And now we're going to introduce our panelists. Dr. Oyaden, did you want to get started?
Thank you, Jasmine. Now, to help eradicate the biased notion about COVID-19, Reliance Clinical Limited has put together, and it's really an honor to have a panel of subject matter experts from across diverse fields. So we have as panelists, I'm going to start with Professor Richard Akingbola, who is a research professor at the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research with 243 peer-reviewed publications on vaccine and vaccine-preventable diseases. And then We have we also have Professor Bimbola Kintade, founder of the NGO Health for Nigeria, also a health commissioner in the state of Maryland, USA, and an associate professor in the School of Nursing, University of Maryland. We also have Dr. Lowo Kere, who is a medical practitioner and a vaccine medical manager with GSK Vaccines. In his role, he drives new vaccine introduction in many countries across Africa. And to bring the religious perspective on COVID-19 vaccinations, we have clerics of the Christian and Muslim faiths on the panel. Venerable Arire Kolawole is a Christian scholar and a conflict resolution and mediation expert, and an ordained priest with the Church of Nigeria, Anglican Communion, Lagos Diocese West. And Imam Bashir Ayadele Toyin Lawal is an Islamic scholar, a seasoned accountant, and a business professional. He was the Imam of Obafemi Awolowo Hall Mosque at the Awolowo Hall Mosque of the Obafemi Awolowo University. And currently he chairs the Lagos State Council of the Zumratul Islamiyah Society, Nigeria. Jasmine will take over with talking about the wonderful women we have on the panel.
So we have Zanaya, and I apologize if I pronounce anybody's name incorrectly, but she has over 8 years of experience in clinical research. She's a very skilled clinical research professional who has extensive project experience in progressively responsible positions. She's worked across a wide array of therapeutic areas during her career at several CROs, and her current role primarily involves monitoring on COVID-19 vaccine trials in the UK at a leading global CRO. And then next we have Dr. O'Ray. And Dr. O'Ray is a consultant family physician, country head of planning, research, and statistics for Nigeria's National Blood Transfusion Service, and senior health policy advisor at the Federal Ministry of Health with over 17 years of private and public healthcare experience. She's worked alongside policymakers, and she advocates for blood policies that reduce maternal and child mortality rates. And then we have Dr. Bidmus. And Dr. Bidmus is a public health researcher and consultant with over a decade experience in successfully conducting clinical and public healthcare research in Canada and the US. Dr. Bidmus, she's authored papers published in peer-reviewed scientific journals such as the Journal of Community Medicine and Health Education, and she has extensive research on mental health, early childhood development, substance abuse, health disparities, maternal health, cancer, behavioral addictions, and other healthcare topics. So that covers all of our panelists, wonderful panelists that we have joining us here today. And we want to try to keep the discussion within an hour, roughly an hour. So as you guys, as we address you and with your questions, we ask that you listen out for a bell, and that will kind of give you an indication that your time is coming to an end. So Dr. Ayaden, do you want to start with the first question?
All right. Okay. Dr. Lowo Kere, thank you very much for joining us. And again, I would like to join everyone to Jasmine to welcome everyone to today's panel discussion on eradicating the bias notion against COVID-19 vaccination. Now, Dr. Lowo Kere will be starting off with you. In your role, you push vaccines everywhere. So why not tell us what is the COVID-19 vaccine? What do we need to know before we receive it?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Oyedon, for that question. And thank you everyone on the call and another panelist. A COVID-19 vaccine is a biological product that has been developed for the purpose of helping to prevent disease from COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 as we know it. That is the organism. So it is a vaccine, it's a biological product that has been purposely prepared to help prevent infection from SARS-CoV-2. The aim is to help to address the ongoing pandemic that is threatening several countries of the world and has brought the world to its knees. The use of this vaccine is an add-on to existing interventions that we have put in place, many of which were not pharmaceutical in nature, such as wearing of our face masks, washing our hands, avoiding crowded places, and all that. It's an add-on to those existing control measures. And one of the reasons why vaccines are used in this context is to be able to help ensure that a large proportion of the population acquires what we call herd immunity. Herd immunity is a form of barrier immunity, which means that in a way, a large percentage of members of the community get exposed to a small fraction of a protein causing the current ongoing pandemic. And in the process, they develop immunity to that, such that when they now get ultimately exposed to the virus causing the ongoing pandemic, it will no longer result in diseases in them. So that is what a COVID-19 vaccine does at the moment. At the moment, we have about 12 of such vaccines currently available. They've been approved for emergency authorization listing by the different bodies, including by WHO. In that sense, you can look at that as a temporary license that has been given to say that in the context of the ongoing pandemic, this is something we have as a vaccine solution to tame the spread of this virus in different parts of the world. Ultimately, the manufacturers are still doing additional research to be able to get the full license, which will make it like any other vaccine that is currently available in routine use. So in brief, I would say that it is a biological preparation that we have as an addition add-on to be able to control the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for staying brief. You're well within time. So Jasmine, you want to go on with Dr. Ore?
Yes, so Dr. Ore, can you share your knowledge on the efficacy and safety of these vaccines?
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here on this panel, and good afternoon to my co-panelists. Thank you for that question. When the discussion starts going towards the safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine, we have to bear in mind the fact that the disease itself was first reported in December 2019. And so why there are concerns about the safety and efficacy is the fact that people are worried about the fact that this vaccine seemed to have come to market in an unprecedented short time. And so, like Dr. Olowokere said, there are several vaccines, but the good thing about the vaccines is that there is no, the technology that's in place for those vaccines is not technology that was developed today. So it was technology that has been developed over years in looking at other diseases, and it has now been used to develop the vaccine for COVID-19. So in terms of safety, the reason why these vaccines have received emergency approval is because the clinical data that we have to date shows that it is safe for use in adults. And that's why these vaccines have been rolled out. And if you see, children are not receiving the vaccine at yet because they're considered a vulnerable population, and there has to be a different way of conducting, giving them vaccines to determine the safety in younger vulnerable populations, such as children. But at the moment, the vaccines as we have them are safe for use, and that's why they've been given the approval by both the Food and Drug Administration in the US FDA and WHO, amongst other country regulatory authorities, for the vaccines to be rolled out. And then for efficacy, they are also quite effective in preventing severe illness and deaths. All the vaccines that have been rolled out at the moment, effectiveness in preventing COVID-19 related severe illness and mortality, that's deaths. So both the vaccines are safe and they're efficacious. Now there's over the last 24 to 48 hours, there have been reports about worries about the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is what we've recently rolled out in Nigeria, about a possible link with clotting episodes using lay terms. Now that has been restricted to a certain batch, and investigations are ongoing to find out whether there's a true direct relationship between those 22 reports. The total number of reports so far is 22 out of millions who have received the vaccine, but it was restricted to several Nordic countries. And so investigations are ongoing on the specific batch that has been flagged to see if there's a direct link between those vaccines and those episodes that were reported. But I'm happy to say that from the data, clinical data that's available and the regulatory authorities, the vaccines from Pfizer to Moderna to AstraZeneca, which we have here in Nigeria, they are safe and they're effective in preventing severe illness and deaths from COVID-19. But they do not preclude the use of the non-pharmaceutical interventions. So even though individuals receive vaccines, they're still advised to maintain physical distancing, continue to regularly wash your hands, wear face masks, because there's still that likelihood of having some of the virus in the nasal tract that could infect others. So I'd like to stop there for now.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ray, and thank you, Jasmine. Now, Professor Akintade, you've received this vaccine, right? Can Professor Akintade hear me? Okay. Perhaps he logged off a bit. So we'll move on. When Professor Akintade comes back to join us, we'll talk about some of the experiences since he has received, and he can give us both a clinician's and an educator's perspective on what it's like to take the vaccine. Now, let's go to a researcher. Professor Adegbola, sir.
Hello.
Now, can you tell us about the clinical research process and the stages these vaccines went through before they got approval? Dr. Ore has talked about quite a number of vaccines, and you're a researcher of the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research. Could you tell us the process they went through to get to the point where they can now be given to people?
Sure. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are, and thank you, Dr. Yedun, for introducing me and the organizers for asking me to join in. It's a pleasure to be part of it, and I think it's a good thing that's happening. Obviously, because of the pandemic and the way it has affected all of us, our lives and our living in the past year and until now. By the way, I can also confirm that I've taken my first dose of the vaccine. So I've actually taken the Moderna first dose, and I'm waiting for my second dose in the coming week. A step back a little bit to talk about vaccination in general, since we are speaking to a mixed audience. In general, vaccines and vaccination are one of the most effective and common types of public health interventions. I don't know if you know, but it is estimated that each year worldwide, vaccines prevent up to 3 million deaths. Just think about that for a minute. 3 million deaths prevented from using vaccines across the board. That is vaccines that are already in place. And I don't know if you know, those that are young or younger than me, you probably haven't heard of, never seen smallpox as a disease. But there's one human disease, smallpox, a devastating, disabling, and disfiguring disease that was eradicated by the use of vaccine and vaccination. And mind you, I'm saying vaccine and vaccination because vaccine alone doesn't actually save life. It's vaccination. The process of taking it from vaccine, from the product, the biological product, to individuals putting them in their hands. So smallpox is eradicated as a result of concerted effort of using vaccine in appropriate vaccination. And the last known, that was actually done in 1980. The last known natural case was seen in Somalia in 1977. Polio is another disease that is on its way out. I mean, most of the people listening to us are from Nigeria, so you must know that Nigeria is now declared free from polio, thanks to the efforts of the federal government of Nigeria and concerted support from global partners. So Africa has been declared free from polio by 25th of August 2020, leaving just 2 countries in the world now. That's Afghanistan, Pakistan, still having endemic polio. So I thought I should set that context with regards to vaccine and vaccination. So what happens with COVID vaccine then? Well, whatever vaccine actually goes through some clinical development processes. And you can actually divide that into 2, preclinical and clinical. But before you even start testing for vaccine or looking for vaccine, you have to establish a disease, that it is a problem in terms of magnitude and its distribution across the ages, populations, and what have you. That is clear with the COVID-19 pandemic. So what are the preclinical testing that they did before moving to clinical studies? Usually it's some kind of research and development component to identify a vaccine candidate, a potential vaccine candidate. And I will go through this slowly because I think from public discussions in Nigeria, we are missing it. Because it's not something it's not what you do overnight. It takes some time of long-time preparation, looking at searching for what might be potential candidate that you can actually take further for evaluation. So the first thing is actually to look at what are the potential targets or potential biological substances within the organisms or the agent causing disease that you can actually take further to evaluate for vaccine. And once you do that, usually in animal or in laboratory studies, and you say, Eureka, you find something that is potentially possible as a vaccine, then you move to clinical studies. These clinical studies are done in phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and later phase 4. So for the vaccines that are being given emergency authorization now, and we need to emphasize that there's no single vaccine, COVID vaccine now that have been formally approved. They're under emergency authorization use. Okay, phase one of the study. Usually you take a smaller number of human beings, usually volunteers and healthy people in the society. And the idea here is to know whether what you have seen in the animal, you can repeat it in human, because you cannot extrapolate directly what you see in animal to human. So you take what you have tested in the lab and in animal, mouse or guinea pig or whatever, and you move now to a few number of persons, 10 to 20 usually, but certainly less than 100 of healthy volunteers, and look for, are there some side effects or safety issues? And is it generating some anti, what we call immune response? or something that can actually kill the organisms that is causing disease. If you're successful with that, you move to phase 2. And phase 2 involves several hundred volunteers. And what you are looking for here is, again, what you're looking for here is common side effects and immune response, or that generating what we call antibodies, but it's not only antibody, there could also be cellular immune responses, and then sign off some protection of disease. If you're happy with that, it's important to emphasize that you cannot move to the next phase without being happy and satisfied in terms of data with the previous phase. So from phase 2, you move to phase 3. Phase 3 is a large efficacy trial. We misuse, and I read in newspapers these days that we misuse efficacy and effectiveness, and I'm going to explain. So phase 3 is a large, usually efficacy trials, and usually involves thousands of volunteers. For the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer messenger RNA vaccine, they've used between 30 and 40,000 people, usually across populations and in different settings. And here, what you're trying to show usually is in what they call randomized control trial. Basically, what it means is you have 2 arms. So you have thousands of people, and one arm you give the vaccine to that you are trying to evaluate, and the other arm you give what they call placebo, or something that looks like the vaccine but is saline or something. And then you expose them and then do surveillance over time to see in these 2 groups. It's very simple, actually. It's logical. In these 2 groups, one group that has received the vaccine or the biological product that you are testing, and the other group, what changes are you seeing in terms of side effects, in terms of immune response, and then you can draw a conclusion to see whether or not the vaccine is capable of doing what you are trying to make it to do. It is important to know that safety data on these vaccines are collected all along the phases. Because you want to, one other point to actually make quickly, vaccines are normally given to healthy people. So listen to this, there's 0 tolerance for mistake because you're going to kill people. I think it's important to know this. You compare vaccine with making an antibiotics or whatever that you give to sick people. With vaccine, you can't make mistake. You have to do all these phases and be sure that at every stage before you move to the other, that it's able to generate the immune response that you're looking for, and it's also capable of not causing harm in terms of side effects. So once you get to this stage, phase 3, then you need to register. You need to go to regulatory authorities. In fact, you should have been working with the regulatory authorities all along so that they know what you are doing and they are monitoring what you are doing to be sure you are not actually causing harm in the society. So usually before you start the clinical studies, phase 2, ideally, if you are successful with your phase 1, with the preclinical study, you should actually go to the regulatory authorities and show them your data before you move to the next stage. One other point to make before I stop is this study normally, this process that I've described normally takes 3 to 5 years. And it is this that has been collapsing to 1 year. And we have to give it up to the scientists actually. Within 1 year, they put all of this together and we have like 12 vaccines now that are being used in various places at with different populations. But it's important to emphasize that despite this urgency, COVID-19 vaccines are being held to the same safety standard that I've described all along. One other thing to add before I stop, I've described phases 1, 2, 3 of clinical studies and the preclinical study, but there's also a phase 4, so that even when vaccine is being licensed and in routine use, the vaccine is still being monitored in terms of safety and effectiveness. You know, in the efficacy studies, in the trials that we've described so far, they are control studies where you're monitoring everything that you're doing apart from just the singular vaccine or the biological product that you're evaluating. When you come to effectiveness in terms of routine use of the vaccine, other times, other conditions come to play. You may not be able to take the vaccine to the place at the right time. There may be no syringes at the right time. There's all sorts of things. There could be temperature failure in terms of cold chain. And the idea of effectiveness monitoring or study or phase 4 trial is that for vaccine routine use, do you still get the same effects that you get or that you got when you were doing the phase 3 efficacy trials? And that is life cycle management of vaccine. So you just don't go throw vaccine out there and then stop it. And that is why you're hearing what is happening now in terms of what the last speaker said with regards to the announcement about AstraZeneca, because you're always monitoring. And we should not be surprised that that is happening. That is normal. And in fact, it doesn't mean that whatever is happening has anything to do with the vaccine. But because you are exposing population to a new product, you need to monitor. And if you see anything like that, you do a temporary suspension of vaccination and do a review of what is happening by an independent body to see whether or not what is happening has anything to do with the vaccine. And once you have done that and there's no relationship, then you start the vaccination again. I'm sorry, I think I will stop there. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot, Prof. I know you have a lot to give us. Thanks for taking some of us back to school.
I like that.
Okay, and but then again, I think it was simple enough for a mixed audience to understand that vaccines go through processes, and normally it takes a while. But for this one, that process was shortened. And that takes us to the next part of the panel discussion, and the next panelist to come on and talk about that. Over to you, Jasmine.
Yes, that's a perfect segue into Zanaya, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. But so as the professor said, typically this process takes much longer to get a vaccine approved and in the arms of people. So Zanaya, can you share with us why we have received approval in less than a year for the current vaccines?
Sure. Hi, Jasmine. So it's actually Zenya, but it's okay. It's it's a tricky one. So before any vaccines can be delivered to the public, as we know, their use has to go through the national regulatory authorities. But the short answer to why we're able to have these vaccines approved so quickly, which it goes against what would normally be the case, is because everything has been kind of amended to suit this pandemic. This is a very unusual situation, as we know. So normally vaccines would take several months and sometimes even years to be created and also approved by the authorities. But because of the urgent need of the vaccine for this COVID-19 to treat the pandemic, they've basically tailored the process. So they're operating on a rolling review. So they still have the same oversight of the regulatory checks and approvals for the delivery to the public. But they're rolling it, instead of looking at everything at the end, what would normally happen is the vaccine would be created over the span of years. That might be to do with funding and different reasons. And then everything would be presented to the regulatory authorities at one time for review and approval. But in this circumstance, we're operating on a rolling review. So as we're getting the information, it's being delivered to the regulatory authorities to review and see if it's been effective, you know, and if it has, then it's been then approved on emergency level. So it doesn't mean that it's on the market, it means it's on a rolling review. So it gets like a temporary emergency approval to be administered. Sorry, I think the video has gone funny there. Yeah, I can see you again. To be administered and treated and treat the public. Yeah, so that's kind of like the short answer, but there haven't been any shortcuts. So it is quite alarming to most of the public to think, oh, hold on, this vaccine has been created quite quickly. That's like the first alarm bell. Secondly, it's already available to be given to the public. That's the second alarm bell. But nobody should be alarmed because the same safety protocols and measures are still being operated and reviewed. It's just done in a rolling way. So instead of waiting for the whole picture and years and years of data, we're operating on continually, on a continual basis, basically.
Thank you. Thank you, Zinnia, for that very well explanation. So that also gives us a nice segue into the next question for Dr. Bidmus. So would you say it's important for us to get the vaccine? I know there's a lot of people in my family, you know, some people are on, you know, they're for it and some people are strongly against it. So would you say it's important for everyone to get the vaccine?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And I think the people that spoke before me, they have they've done a great job in sort of like, you know, putting things into perspective for everyone. Yeah, to answer your question, I think that's the best thing anyone could do for themselves in terms of, you know, how important it is to get the vaccine. I mean, historically speaking, vaccine has, you know, bad rap in terms of, you know, vaccination in general. You know, even before COVID, people are always like, you know, skeptical. You know, there's been like, you know, link, you know, even not proving vaccine and, you know, autism. You know, that's a different topic entirely. But you know, with this, you know, thing that we find us at this pandemic, I mean, we've lost so many lives to COVID, and you know, people are still being sickened by COVID. People are on ventilators in the hospital around the world with this, and you know, the best option we have right now, the only option we have right now is for us to get the vaccine, which can save ourselves and also our family members, our loved ones, and you know, the community. And I think someone talked about the herd immunity prior. We're in a race to get to that herd immunity, where we rest assured that, you know, a lot of people are vaccinated. So this way to stop the spread of this virus. And I especially like the idea of having faith-based leaders, you know, on this panel, because from my experience, I think that most people sort of like, you know, rely on their faith and the sort of like, you know, they trust their faith leaders in terms of, you know, making decisions like this. So I think, you know, getting the word out there and educating people like we're doing right now, promoting this, you know, how important it is, you know, and I think it's one of the, is the first step, one of the main step in assuring people around the world that it is okay, it's safe to get this vaccine, and it's the best thing we can do for us. So I myself have taken the 2 doses of the vaccine, and, you know, yeah, of course, the first one, when I got it, the only thing it was just like, you know, sore harm. And the second one, I'm not going to lie, you know, which has been putting out there, everything has been transparent in terms of, you know, the side effects. It was just, you know, I got a little bit of fever, you know, and what else? I think I got like, you know, chills, and it was just, I took a day off of work just to like, you know, manage things. And, you know, I was back on my feet, you know, the next day. So whenever I sit in this kind of like a panel to discuss similar, you know, public health issue, like I always say, whenever I come to vaccine, there's 3 different kind of people or groups, you know. They're the anti-vaxxers that no matter what you say about vaccine, they're not going to, you know, accept it. And then we have people that are skeptical, which they have every right to be. And there are people that they just want, you know, information about the vaccines. And so that's why we're here, to sort of like, you know, provide what we know about the vaccine. So this way to assure, you know, people that, like Dr. Ore said, like, you know, it's, you know, the efficacy is good, you know, it's something that's you know, you don't have to, although like, you know, right now we have so many crazy myths going around, you know, social media about this vaccine. I just always tell people, please, you know, stop sharing all these messages. There are people that are working like, you know, behind the scene, like, you know, they're working hard to make sure this thing is possible for us. So no matter whatever it is, you know, whether it's the Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, the Johnson & Johnson, just, you know, take it and you're doing yourself a big favor, not only yourself, your loved ones and the community as a whole. So that's we can all reach that herd immunity, and we can get back to sort of like normal. We can get back to normal because the way it used to be, because masks is still going to be on, washing hands constantly, and maintaining social distance. So it is very important to get this vaccine, and I can't say that enough. Please do. Whenever it becomes available to you, just take the vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bidmus. That was definitely very helpful, especially to the people that, like you said, are listening to a lot of the misinformation, the false information out there. So thank you for that. And I also forgot to mention that if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Because at the end, we're going to take questions to the speakers, to the panelists. So you don't have to wait until the end. You can go ahead and put any questions that you have in the chat box. And Dr. Oyeden?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bidmus. That was good. I'm also happy you shared your experience while taking the vaccine, which takes us back to Professor Kitari. Professor Kitari, welcome back. You have taken the vaccine. Professor Kitari, are you with us? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And let me please apologize to everyone. Please forgive me. I'm a big stickler for time. I'm on time for everything, but I had an emergency meeting with a certain leadership this morning. So please forgive me. I just came on. Yes, I have taken the vaccine, both the first and the second. And,
okay, great.
I took the Pfizer vaccine.
Please share your experience. I'm sure a lot of people here would like to hear.
Okay, so thank you. As you can tell, I'm not over age 65, and probably based on age would not qualify for the 1A or 1B category, but via age. But I'm a frontline healthcare worker, so that's how I qualified. But also, I mean, I'm a faculty member in a healthcare program institution, so I would have qualified that way. I took my first Pfizer vaccine on December 20th, I think. And for the first vaccine that's supposed to provide an efficacy of, I think, somewhere in the 50% range, I didn't really have any symptoms. I had some injection site, pain, which really wasn't a big deal. I think that resolved in about 24 hours or so. The second vaccine was where I experienced a little more symptoms. I took my second vaccine 20 days later, which is the recommendation for Pfizer. And after my second vaccine, I took it at about 9 a.m. in the morning, went home, all was fine as usual. Over the course of the day, I felt my arm, hurt a little bit, once again, the injection site, tenderness, which is not uncommon. At night, I started to feel a little feverish, I had a low grade temperature, and I just decided it was time to go to bed. I had some chills. I took ibuprofen at the time, even though now with some of my research, I think Tylenol, acetaminophen is what we should take just to help with the symptoms. And I woke up the next morning and with a little bit of sweat, but by 24 hours after, I mean, I felt like new, and sort of doing a little bit of research once again. That's what we're expected to experience after the vaccine, especially the second one. Not everyone actually presents with those same symptoms, but that's just basically the body developing immunity. So my symptoms lasted for probably about 24 hours, and after that, I felt as good as new since.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Kitade, for sharing your experience, telling us all the clinical symptoms that people need to, and signs people need to look out for, and those they shouldn't worry about. Now, I think we should take us now to hear, almost every speaker has talked about some of the myths, particularly those who work closely with Nigeria have talked about some of the myths, some of the issues that are running rampant about the vaccine here in Nigeria. And religion plays a really strong role in vaccination uptake. And to address some of these, we have, like I mentioned, we have an Islamic and a Christian cleric here. So I'll be starting with Imam Lawal. Imam Lawal, you're here with us?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, thank you very much. Now, are there Islamic concerns about taking the COVID-19 vaccine?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, all the members of the panel. And all the listeners. Yes, there are some concerns concerning the vaccine. In Islam, there are two terms, that is the lawful and the unlawful. We call it halal, and we call the second one haram. And any Muslim want to guide against having any cause to take something that is haram, that is something that is not lawful for you to take. There are so many things that have been listed as haram, that is those things that you cannot take in forbidden food, and those things that you can take. So in order to be very cautious that you don't get into the tangle of committing a sin, so to speak. So everybody is very, very aware and very, very cautious. However, on this first vaccine, some Muslim doctors have come up with some reasoning saying that we should allay the fear of Muslim Ummah. Some Muslim scientists and doctors who have knowledge about the material used in producing this vaccine have confirmed that the fat that was extracted from pork were mainly the source of the main ingredients used in producing the vaccine. However, they said that having the vaccine is not like eating pork anyway, because the conclusion was that it was like using any drug produced from either alcohol or similar materials prohibited in Islam. It is as a result of the need for protection against a ravaging pandemic, and as such, it is taken as a result of necessity. Their conclusion is that taking vaccine doesn't contradict the provision of eating of pork. However, before I address this particular matter straight off, it is important to mention some of the universal maxims that governs it. One, preservation of life is of utmost importance in Sharia. Allah has permitted for someone who is compelled the consumption of even carcasses and even the utterance of words of disbelief. Trivial things are excused in Islam. That is, we are not expected to be so extreme in whatever we are doing, because Allah wants is for his servants. He doesn't want any hardship for us anyway, and he loves that any of his servants should avail themselves of his concessions. Sometimes using them is preferable or even obligatory. That is to say, if you are sick and there are certain things that should take care of your sickness, and from your perspective, you think that it is an haram, but at that point in time, you don't have any alternative. Allah permits us, and warrants by giving us a concession that you can take it. Using a forbidden substance other than pure alcoholic beverage as medicine is permissible according to the majority of the scholars, if it is the sole effective treatment for such a disease. And the vast majority of contemporary scholars, they have adopted this position because of the clear benefits in modern medicine that approach certainty at every time. In the course of my research, I discovered that sometimes in 1992, we have the Islamic United Fiqh Council, and they are the premier fiqh council in the world. They passed a resolution. They said that it is permissible for government to make compulsory medical treatment for certain infectious disease. So the intention would be to curb the spread of such disease, which might cripple the socio-economic life of the citizen, which inadvertently will affect the nation as a whole. So it is economic life of the citizen which is very compulsory for the citizens, especially the Muslims, to abide and support. I will give an example. You cannot perform Hajj that is our going to the going for pilgrimage. You cannot perform Hajj if you do not carry a certificate that you have been immunized against meningitis, for instance. And I think yesterday or day before yesterday, I read in a report that Saudi Arabia authority has now decided that Muslim that intends to perform this year's Hajj, that is 2021 Hajj, they must carry a certificate against coronavirus. So when I'm suspicious from some Muslims organizations or some Muslim bodies, because they don't know the content of what the fasting is made of. So in that wise, they need a lot of communication, a lot of explanation, and for them to know that whatever they are taking is not going to contradict their faith. So those are the areas that one should look at. The moment you are satisfied that what you are taking is not going to affect your faith, then you are free to take it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for that, Imam Lawal. I'm sure I can see the chat room, and I can see that some of the things you've pointed out are already raising questions. But we'll come back to them, and I'm sure you'll address them all. But before we do that, let's hear from the Christian faith. Venerable Kolawole.
Thank you so much, and
thank you for joining us. Now, as there have been some concerns for Muslims, there have also been a lot of ethical issues raised in Christian communities with regards to how the vaccines were made and the intentions. Can you talk around some of these things?
thank you once again, and for having me. It is a privilege to be here and to take part in this. And at the same time, I've also tapped so much knowledge, a lot of information through other presentations I've received that is also going to be helpful even after now. Let me start by saying this. One is that Christianity is believed to be a religion of healing, and also modern medicine and science. It is also established by history that vaccination or vaccine matter is not strange to Christianity. And as a matter of fact, history also had it. We have it on record on biblical history, and that back in 1798, a Christian devotee also developed, vaccine that was also published then in terms of, curing and preventing smallpox. So as per these ongoing, the position of Christianity is all about moral complexity, that has actually led to different opinions, and that is misconceptions and some, wrong informations that have been given. Having said this, among of other, issues, probably people or information that people have been receiving in the wrong, way. One of the most important one that is quite vital, it is one of the materials that was used, that is being used to develop the vaccine, and that is aborted beta cells, which, as Christians, we against, abortion of whichever stage of which it may be, no matter the stage of the growth, whether early stage or later, we against it. Once the conception has been formed and life is already set in, then abortion is abortion. It's considered in Christianity to be, a murder, and which is not taken. However, we also, in the recent time, understand that there are other ways of which vaccine is being developed now, without even using this aborted fetal cell. Having said that, which means since it is all about saving life, for now, What we just need, it is more education, more information. What I have seen is that the frontline people, the medical and the clinical, people, and especially government, need to inform people. Like the Imam have said, that since we, before coronavirus, we've been taking vaccine, polio vaccine, smallpox, and all sorts of, since people have been taking that, and of course, some of the things are being raised now in Christendom as being against our own religion happens to be used at that time. So I don't see anything wrong in it. So what is major and very important now, it is the information. So people has to be well informed, because there are lots of rumors going around. In fact, within this shortest time that I've listened, there are a lot of things that I have gathered that to diffuse some of the information that we already gathered. For now, in summary, I don't think Christianity, we don't really have anything against taking this vaccine. One, for the fact that it's going to save life, and of course it is to also, Christianity is about saving life, and number two, helping others, because it is also, we have it in the Bible to love our neighbors. So that can also be helpful at this aspect. And of course, preventing the infection, even the society from spreading, even making innocent people being a victim of such. So since vaccine is going to help in all these areas, Christianity has nothing, to do. Has nothing against it. It is a welcomed, idea, for us at these times to partake in it. Like I've said, apart from that issue of the abortion fetal cell being used in the stage of development of that vaccine, which I believe that if people can be well furnished with good information and well educated about it, I think it won't be an issue. For now, it is not an issue, and the debate that is going around the church now, with my own research and data that I have gathered in the church now, in all Afura, for now, I think more than 90%, Christians are actually waiting to receive it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venerable Kolawole. I know we've had the opportunity to go from science to religion to those who have received it, sharing practical experience, and I'm sure we've all picked one or two things, and questions have started coming in. While we put them together, we know that because the panelists are all subject matter experts who also have knowledge across some of the questions we've asked. If you have any closing remarks from any of the panelists over the next 5 minutes, can you just say them now?
So actually, since I came relatively late and I didn't really get the opportunity to say much earlier, I actually was hoping for the opportunity to share something that I think may be impactful for all of us. One of the risks we run is a lot of times when we get information, we use it not only to or for our own consumption, but also just for our immediate network. I think this webinar has been fantastic. Even though I wasn't logged in, I was able to hear some of the earlier discussions. My hope is that, and I really love the comments by the Imam and the Christian leader who just spoke, is that a lot of the information we're getting right now is something we can actually in our own way disseminate. It takes a community to raise a child. What we're recognizing right now is even though a lot of people are talking about vaccine hesitancy, that term and word is actually being met with some challenges, by individuals, because it seems to carry a lot of bias. When you say someone is hesitant to do something, you're almost inferring that they're hesitant to do the right thing. So then what is the right thing? What is our understanding of what the right thing is for us? Each person has their own lived experience, so this is an opportunity, for us to actually try to change the narrative. One of the terms that we're actually pushing now is vaccine thoughtfulness, which hopefully should meet people exactly where they are. A lot of people have very realistic experiences, either for them or for whatever cohort of people they represent. What we're recognizing is a lot of minority individuals, especially in developed countries, but also even our own country, for whatever reason, political, religious, a lot of people have very good reasons for not wanting to take the vaccine. Science is just one of those perspectives. And so for us who have this information, I think it's very important to stop, listen to what people have to say, and then, try to meet them where they are. I was in an advisory board meeting with a healthcare professional who has refused to take the vaccine. And I spent about 15 minutes explaining the different types of vaccine and the research. And she said, no, it's not for a lack of knowledge. Her reason for not wanting to take the vaccine is because she wants to take a stand for what has happened to Black people in the past with, non-sanctioned scientific research studies. So I had to change my perspective. It's not for a lack of knowledge. She teaches this information, and so I asked the next question. So you not taking the vaccine, is that going to make a difference for the Black people you're representing, or should you now use yourself as a portal, a conduit, for change? And so we sort of had that dialogue, so whatever we do, let's be a little more thoughtful. Those who don't want to take the vaccine or who have different approaches to it, for the most part might have legitimate reasons why. Let's try to meet them where they are. And if it's information, let's give them the information. There has to be sort of a grassroots movement also from our churches, our mosques, our barbershops, our hangouts, any opportunity we have, just to explain our experiences and be transparent. That's why I didn't say, no, the vaccine had no effect on me. No, I told you exactly what I felt. So when someone else feels that, they understand, that's actually the normal course for the vaccine. They're not dying,
Thank you very much, Professor Akitade, for some of those tips on how to go around changing the narrative. Now, we'll take one more panelist, just briefly, a minute, and then we'll quickly take the questions and answers. Any other panelists?
I was raising my hand. Can I say something?
Yeah, please go ahead, Professor.
Okay, just to make a few observations about what we've had. I think it's just to highlight, actually. So emergency use authorization, and I want to emphasize that again, that there's no single COVID-19 vaccine for now that's being given formal approval. There's emergency use authorization. Again, is to reassure us of the safety. They are taking all the processes or the procedures that are necessary to make sure that this vaccine is safe and that we produce the effect. So they're still gathering data that will be submitted for formal approval. I want to just add to what the last speaker just said, that it is normal to have some effects.
Side effects.
Because that is to show actually that your body is generating the immune responses that is necessary. For the pastor and the imam, the scholar, the Islamic scholar, I just want to again mention the fact that not all the vaccines are made in the same way. So you can make choices, because vaccines are produced so there is an inactivated vaccine that's just the virus itself that is treated in a way that it will not cause disease. Nothing's been added to it, but it will not cause disease, but can stimulate immune responses. There's some particles and what have you. So there are various ways of making vaccines. Don't let us go with the idea that all the vaccines have only just one methodology of making them. So the material, in terms of the worry about the Islamic scholar about what might be the materials, I think like the pastor said, what we need is information. provide information that is available. Actually, I would just say, confront whatever it is you're told by facts, not arguments, not like one of the speakers has said. We are not quarreling, just make facts available to people and refer them also further to where they can get further information, like the Federal Ministry of Health in Nigeria, the Nigeria CDC, where they can get, because things are being, actually, people just get things from social media and then they forward. Please just don't forward. If you don't understand, make sure you go to people who might have the appropriate information. Phone numbers are available and what have you to get to confirm information before you start spreading them. And that. One last thing I'd like to say is that we can be champions. Those of us here today now, we have heard, we know what the facts are, then we can take them outside. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very, very much to all our panelists for the insights, the knowledge shared, the experience shared, and I'm sure this has gone a long way. Now, before I hand over to Jasmine for the Q&A session, I'd like to bring out some of the key points that have been said. First of all, those who have been involved, who understand the process of development and how vaccines work, have told us in summary to trust the science behind the vaccines, and that when in doubt, the science even provides us options. So, and our clerics from both the Christian and Muslim world have told us that neither of the faiths have anything against taking the COVID-19 vaccine, because at the end, humanity wins when we take the vaccine. And right now, the world really wants to go back to normal. The world really needs to go back to normal. So a lot of restrictions are still in a lot of places globally and even locally here. So trust the science. Religion does not say you shouldn't take it. And when you do not trust one version of the science, there are alternatives you can pick from. So thank you very much, everyone, for your submissions, for what you've said so far. So Jasmine, over to you for the Q&A.
Thank you, Dr. Oyedan. So I know we are 12 minutes over already, so we want to we're going to try to take as many questions as we can. But the first one that we have is, and this is for any of the panelists that would like to answer the question.
And several of the vaccines have several storage mechanisms. And so if we look at the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, those vaccines require sub-zero temperature storage. Then you look at an AstraZeneca vaccine that requires refrigerator temperature storage, similar to Johnson & Johnson or Janssen vaccine. So for the COVAX facility, they had to, in trying to arrive at vaccine arrangements for countries like Nigeria, countries in Africa, they also had to be realistic. And in being realistic, they had to bear in mind the cold chain mechanisms, the mechanisms through which those vaccines will be stored and remain viable to be moved from place to place. And so when individuals ask about, oh, why didn't we receive Pfizer or why didn't we receive Moderna? I say to them that I, as a healthcare professional, a public health official, I would be more confident with a vaccine that I know we have the capability, given our present realities, to keep viable. And so this morning I received my first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I mean, it's being managed by the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, which is the agency that manages vaccines for the childhood preventable illnesses and all other vaccine preventable illnesses in Nigeria. So at least we know that there's an institution in place that is used to managing vaccines at that level. Now, would we have wanted to complicate it by rushing for the Pfizer vaccine, remember that these vaccines were donated as well. And then there's also a cost differential. The vaccine costs between AstraZeneca and Pfizer will also tell you the difference. So these are some of the factors. So one of the things I'd like to us to take away from this conversation today, and I was happy Professor Adebola mentioned it, is that each of us should take responsibility as advocates and seek to inform at our own levels of the community. And so we should be using community structures that are in place. Glad to see the Venerable here, the Islamic cleric that's here as well, and so many of us. This morning when I was out there receiving my vaccine, I actually spent some time speaking to some people who were there, but really did not understand anything about the vaccines and why they should even be receiving it. Some of them just out of curiosity walked into the hospital to see what's happening, maybe to see people dropping after receiving the vaccine. So a lot of people are aware that the vaccines are there, but they don't have information. And so for people that have information, access to information, helping to communicate this information in our community spaces and referring people, like Prof said, to sources of verifiable information is critical. And one thing we should realize is that the message is not even more important than the messenger. And that's why I was particularly excited to see on this panel representatives from faith-based organizations who hold a formidable amount of influence in the mindsets and perspectives of people, especially with regards to interventions like the vaccine.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. Thank you. Thank you. Very good, detailed explanation. Dr. Oyedan, do you want to present the next question?
All right. Okay. So some of the questions here talk about some of the things that have been addressed by these panelists, but just as a reinforcement, just so that we keep preaching the message and people keep hearing them, and hopefully they become, they themselves become ambassadors of the message that this pandemic needs to end, and they need to play their part by taking vaccine. We'll take some of them again. Now, so one is what are the possible long-term side effects of the vaccine? Since these have not been studied, and Professor Adebola has severally mentioned that the use of these vaccines are emergency use authorization. So what are the possible long-term side effects people can be looking, can suspect or expect to have over time? Professor Adebola, would you like to, Adebola, sir, would you like to address that?
I think, Doctor, you'd like to give me a new name, but the silence.
My sincere apologies.
But I'm happy with that as well. No. That's a good question about long term. But remember, we have said several times these are new vaccines. So if there is vaccine that's just being used, you cannot know what the long-term effect will be. But remember, as I mentioned, there is a phase 4 effectiveness study. And I can tell you that that's happening right now. In the UK, where the vaccine has been introduced already, they're already publishing paper. In Scotland, for example, they know already that the vaccine is as effective as when it was used it was found to be during efficacy. What we need to do in Nigeria, which I'm sure they will do, is to make sure that we also start a form of an effectiveness study, so that over time, we can begin to notice what might happen. The reason why that's important is that, during the trials period that we have described, you only look at a limited number of people, 30,000, 40,000, but now you're going to millions. So are you going to begin to see some rare side effect that you couldn't detect because of the limited number of people? And so that's why there will be opportunity to do that. But it's being monitored. WHO is going to set up, I'm sure, a multi-nation, multi-site effectiveness study for those countries where they cannot actually do that on their own. So the vaccine thing there's a life cycle kind of management for vaccine. They don't just throw vaccine out there and then forget about it. There's a system, what they call pharmacovigilance. even for the companies making the vaccine, they want to see what's happening over time. And that is normal with all vaccines. It's not just, it's not restricted to only COVID-19 vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. People should look forward to the information as the organizations get the information, they'll be sure to push them out for people to know. Dr. Okere, there's a question here that I think in your work you'll probably come across a lot, and that's about if it's safe for pregnant women to take these vaccines. Would you care to address that, sir?
Okay, thank you very much. Whether it is safe for
women in the same breath.
Okay, so whether it is safe for pregnant women or breastfeeding women to take the vaccine.
I want to add that someone asked, is it true that if you take the vaccine, you must not get pregnant for 6 to 12 months?
Okay, so from the safety, so I want to speak as somebody from the manufacturer's end now. One thing is that generally precautions are taken in administering vaccines to pregnant women. And it is even more important in a situation we are in now, when we are having emergency use authorization, not even the full licensing like we normally have for most products. And that has an historical context to it. We don't want to give products that might constitute a health risk to our pregnant women or to nursing mothers and their children. So for COVID vaccine, first is to adhere to the manufacturer's instruction. At the moment, I believe each of the manufacturers must provide a kind of guideline, caution, warning as regards how their vaccines should be used. But also, in addition to whatever the manufacturer recommends, we should stick with WHO position. So if we look at WHO current recommendation for the use of AstraZeneca vaccines in pregnancy or breastfeeding women, their position is that it should be given provided the benefit far outweighs the risk. So the healthcare professional who is attending to that pregnant woman should consider the risk that pregnant woman is likely to be exposed to, or breastfeeding mother, and should weigh that versus the risk of taking the vaccine. And that position is just to make sure that we don't expose people to avoidable harm as much as possible. So for example, for somebody that is, let's say I'm a healthcare worker, I'm equally pregnant, for that kind of a person, perhaps it would be most appropriate to administer the vaccine to that person, because the person has because we know that pregnancy can increase the severity of COVID. And then for being a healthcare worker and being pregnant, you are even a frontline officer. Your risk of exposure to COVID is even much higher. So for that kind of a healthcare worker, you might want to strongly recommend getting vaccine. But that decision, as proposed by WHO, should be contextualized and should be a joint decision between the healthcare professional who is managing that pregnant woman and that pregnant woman or breastfeeding mother, as the case may be.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okay. Over to you, Jasmine.
Thank you. So the next question, and it's getting pretty late now, so this may be our final question. If you get the first dose and you don't have the opportunity to get the second dose due to, unforeseen circumstances or whatever reason, what is the percentage of protection?
Well, when the vaccine first came out, I know that I got the Moderna one, and the efficacy, when you get the first one, the efficacy was, I think, about 52%, and you're not fully protected. And it's by then you wait about a month, before getting the second dose, which is, at that time, after getting the second dose, you're 85%. But now, like everybody has said, this is new. Studies being done like around the clock, like, Dr. Adegbola said, so things are constantly changing. Information are constantly being put out by the CDC, the WHO, and the other organizations. So what I learned, recently was that, most of you have probably heard about it, like in most countries actually thinking of, delaying when people get the first one, to delay it so that to delay the second one, to allow other, people in the country to get the first shots, and the reason being is that, studies has been done, which shows that, recently the new studies or the new tests that have been done show recently that after the first one, so people are not actually protected, like, 85% or thereabouts. So, but other people argued against this, that it's just, it's not a good idea to actually delay the second dose. So to answer the question, I think it will be ideal, just to follow the rule in terms of, like, if you get the Pfizer or whichever one you get, if it's J&J, which is a single shot, or you get the Moderna, which is like, within 1 month, and just, get the second dose, depending on where you are, because, I think some countries are, thinking of enforcing the idea of, like, after the first shot, delaying the second one till whenever they decide, so to ensure that a lot of people actually got, the vaccine because of this shortage, I think, yeah. So I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that.
Can I add a little to that? Mm-hmm. I agree with what you said, but I think we have to be careful. I evaluate vaccines, and you do them under certain conditions, control conditions. So if they say 2 doses, and go back to what Dr. Oluokere also said, if that's what they recommend, then that's what we should recommend. If you change the pattern, you get different results, you cannot hold them to ransom. I mean, they are prescribing or telling you to use the vaccine according to what they have evaluated. If you're going to use 1 dose or change the time interval before you get the second dose, then you have to do another trial. You have to do something else to prove to make sure to show that works.
And that's the reason why there's controversy over that. The fact that some countries are actually proposing that, because it's just better to stick with the original plan as to, like, get the first vaccine, and whatever which one you get, with the interval, if it's Pfizer, 3 weeks, and get the second dosage.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but please don't forget that this is a series. So we will continue this discussion. Please be on the lookout for the next date and time of the next panel discussion. So if we weren't able to get to your questions, then please bring them to the next discussion. But thank you for all of the panelists for joining us today. You all gave some very, very great wisdom, knowledge, information. We appreciate you, and we definitely thank you for attending as guests. And Timmy?
Thanks a lot, Jasmine. I'd just like to thank everyone, like Jasmine said, the moderators, Jasmine and Dr. Oyedun, the speakers, participants. I hope this is really informative for everyone, and we can always share our knowledge and build a shield. If we have the opportunity to take it, we can always take it and then have that herd immunity. So everyone else that can't take it are not willing to take it because they don't believe in vaccines, at least we can free the world of this pandemic and educate everyone. On that note, I would like to say thank you to everyone again, and have a good day and a weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining in. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.